Hello and welcome to the Nintendo 64 Beta Project, the show where we take unreleased mods and prototype N64 games and put them through the paces to find out if we really missed out on some great classics. Now, as you know from my channel, I absolutely love the Nintendo 64. One thing I also love is Japanese animation, particularly Robotech. So when I heard that my two favourite things were coming together for a brand new Nintendo 64 game, my fanboy side absolutely went mental. Officially announced in May 1995, Robotech Academy was essentially a battle simulator for Robotech. However, in 1996, Doug Lanford, who joined the development team and was a huge fan of Robotech, took the concept, threw it out the window and went about setting to create one of the most ambitious 3D games that had ever been made. It was going to be the first 3D space shooter created especially for a console. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Robotech Crystal Dreams. Before the launch of Nintendo 64, developer GameTech showed off rendered screenshots for its cartridge-based shooter, Robotech Crystal Dreams, to the optimistic gaming media. At this point, nobody, software houses included, knew exactly what to expect from the batch of next-generation consoles. Perhaps because of a general industry ignorance of 3D games, GameTech's ambitious renders of the cartoon-themed space shooter were taken as realistic representations of what could be achieved on Nintendo 64. Typical of such unveilings, the hype factor quickly bubbled to explosive proportions, and all of a sudden, GameTech found its Robotech title included on the shopping lists of would-be Nintendo 64 owners. After all, we didn't know what next-generation graphics would be like, so when we were shown the stunning shots, we had no reason to believe this would not be what to expect in the game. Robotech Crystal Dreams was a simulation-like take on the beloved series, complete with the complex storyline involving characters such as Rick Hunter and Max Sterling. The game, which took place almost entirely inside the cockpit view, featured huge stretching environments by which players could literally fly from one end of space to the other, and according to GameTech, the procedure could take up to 6 months in real time. Let's just say that again. The developers said it would take 6 months real time to fly from one side of the galaxy to the other, and this was to be on an early Nintendo 64 cartridge-based game. This statement alone should tell you where this story is going to end up. In addition to this, more than 30 different controllable functions were at the player's disposal. Models could transform, and all sorts of different branching missions were available, as well as a 4-player battle mode and more than 40 minutes of in-game speech. Let's mention something once more. This was an early N64 title. Hell, not even Capcom could do so much at the end of the Nintendo 64's life with Resident Evil. Robotech was originally thought to be a launch title, but it never happened. A year passed, and in 1997, GameTech, obviously suffering from serious money troubles, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in order to rework and resettle its debts. Financial setbacks would plague GameTech throughout its life, and so it would eventually capsize the company and its anticipated game. So that's the end of this story. Or is it? Though the situation looked bad for GameTech and Robotech Crystal Dreams, the company somehow managed to stay afloat. An alliance with publisher Take-Two bore 2 new internal N64 releases, first being Wheel of Fortune and second was Jeopardy, both of which reaped modest sales but did just enough to keep Robotech in production. However, the dollar income was not enough to keep the firm's main project Robotech well funded. On top of everything, Tomy, the scheduled Japanese publisher, dropped the title from its lineup, citing licensing conflicts as the primary reason. The game came close to being scrapped completely at this point, and once again all seemed lost for Robotech, but there was help from a very unlikely source. Surprisingly, Capcom, still without a Nintendo 64 title under its belt, signed an intent to distribute contract with GameTech, which made the unbelievers take notice and caused the fans to cheer. Robotech was finally coming. GameTech, ignoring its own financial difficulties, told the press that it would self-publish the title. They told the press that Robotech was nearly finished. Fanboys went crazy, myself included. Finally, we would get to enter the world of Robotech. But it never happened. An ex-development team member from GameTech tells the story of how Robotech was finally blasted into space dust. We came in on Monday, July 20th to work as usual, and there was a sign on the door saying that GameTech was closed due to bankruptcy. We were allowed to pick up our personal belongings, and that was the end. GameTech ran out of money. So Robotech was well and truly dead, finished, buried, never to be seen again. But just like the Terminator, this game would simply not die. Whilst we'll never get a completed version of the game, the developers actually released the ROM and the code for the game online. Not only this, but a short time afterwards, a fan of the game released a patch which essentially fixed many of the smaller bugs from the prototype. The game itself is quite fun to play, but be warned, it is still extremely buggy. The tutorial freezes, the music randomly stops, and if you speed up too much, the gameplay grinds to a standstill. However, there are some interesting elements in the game. There is already the option to customise your Veritech, and there are multiple missions to play through, however many of them are simply background swaps involving Earth, Saturn and asteroid fields. So what are your thoughts on Robotech Crystal Dreams? Do you think the Nintendo 64 missed out on a great game, or do you think the game was simply too big to ever be finished and definitely overambitious for the time? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked, please hit that like button. Until next time, you can catch me on my Facebook page at the link below. See you soon.